And Paul George really hasn't been the same since he got hurt in OKC, where he had like that really season where like really he was like one of the top 3 players in the league and do that. And then like both Kawhi and Paul George really have not been physically good in LA to the point where like I'm questioning the Clippers kind of training stuff.
Welcome to episode 36 of the David Binkowski podcast. My guest today, SportsGrid Senior Data Analyst, Arturo Gaetti. Arturo, welcome back to the podcast.
Nice to be back. Even though like I was like, we were just talking before this. I'm like, God, what a complicated like NBA season to kind of parse.
It has been absolutely chaotic. And I love it, quite frankly, because my team's the fuck out of it, but like the rest of the NBA, it's been fun to watch because you don't know. It's so many injuries, guys resting, and then teams that are just underperforming. Some are old, like the Kings, come out of nowhere. Like there's some fun NBA stuff going on. It's exactly with the parity I think that the league was hoping for.
I think it's been fun. It's not really parity in the sense of like it's a change, and what I mean, it's a change season in the sense of like basically the teams, you're getting a bunch of guys. I mean, you have the older generation that's been there, the dominant teams for a while. And really, these other teams were bubbling up. And I think some of that also kind of the teams that were bubbling up, some of them got hurt too. Yep. So it makes for a really interesting season. Like, it's just, it started to happen last season, more pronounced this season. Yeah, I think things like, you can clearly kind of tell who probably the best team in the league is, but they're also kind of like, they'll fuck off and lose to the Magic. So like, it'll be I'm reverting to the Celtics, but they'll fuck off and lose to the Magic.
Right.
Because I think part of that is also they're kind of worried about like getting everybody healthy more than else, and like, figuring Robert in and whatnot. But like, then it makes for an interesting season because there's no dominant MVP. There's like, we were talking about this beforehand, like typically we're about almost 60% of the games have been played in the NBA. And by this point, you can generally point out like with certainty about, a good 12 or 13 of the eventual 16 playoffs. So top 8 seeds for league for conference. And this year, we're talking about this. I got 5 teams that my simulation is saying are 95% better in the East and 3 in the West.
Well,
and one of them's the fucking one of them's the fucking Kings.
They're fun to watch. They're fun to watch. So I asked you then. Let's start in the West. Let's start in the West. And I wanted to let's talk about the Kings, but also about like who's your favorite? I mean, like you said, it's wide. It feels fairly wide open. Denver's playing great, but who's your favorite?
I think right now, again, the way this works typically historically is that teams generally, they bubble up by levels. So basically you expect them to make it like, it's hard to make it, because it's hard to make it the first time to that conference final. It's hard to make it to the, then to like the next level, to the finals, right? And so like, you almost have to like pay your dues in a way when you're going through. So I think Denver is poised to me and has been for a while to make it to the finals. Right. In terms of winning, the problem is like the first time you make it, you're not getting any fucking calls in the finals. So I would say that like, again, right now my favorite is still the Celtics. I do think that like whoever kind of makes it between them and the Bucks. The problem for the Bucks has been the same problem the entire season, is the Bucks are one of the oldest teams in the league. And you're kind of seeing that in the regular season because they're kind of hit miss. They're kind of like, they're playing really badly, really well. And this is what happens to older teams. It can be very hard for them to sustain like the level of play for the entire season. And they really kind of shouldn't. They're really just trying to make the playoffs, right? So that's kind of the problem. Like the Celtics are very young, so they don't have that problem. Their problem is more like, they're trying to integrate players. So I do think of those two teams, that's the better one. The Nets have bubbled up, but I don't trust them. Like, they still have the head cases on their team, so I don't trust that a lot. But yeah, I still kind of feel that whoever wins the eventual Boston-Milwaukee series should be considered your favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, it's hard to argue. I mean, what you got a defending champion, you got a team that just was there. If you're talking about that proverbial Lakers, Celtics, Pistons, like who's the Bulls, who's next because they earned it because they worked their way up. Those are your teams. The West to me is so wide open. Again, Denver's got a great record. They're first in the West. Jokic is playing great, but they haven't been there, like you said. So, and do you see anybody else in the West? I mean, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, Warriors are your next two in terms
the Grizzlies.
of odds.
I think the Grizzlies and the Nuggets are my pick for the final in the Western Conference. And I think both those teams, the trick with the Grizzlies is the Grizzlies are really good, consistently very good defensively, very good, very well coached, very solid, but they have been somewhat fragile in the series. Same with Denver. Both those teams have been kind of fragile. And I think those are the two teams I'd expect to be in the conference finals out West. Because even though, again, the Warriors, their absolute best is probably better than both those teams, but they also have a really weird roster, and they had a weird roster. Like the roster is not as good as it was last season,
right?
And that can be a real problem in like the stretch of the series, and that like they're also going to be like on the road, and both those teams, Denver and Memphis, have had that experience now, and I think kind of points. Denver, obviously, the issue is going to be, are they healthy? And then a little bit with Memphis too. Like, is Ja going to be around? Ja going to be healthy? That's kind of the. I mean, there's some wildcats in there, but like, I don't trust the Clippers team. Do you?
No, to me, so it's the schedule for the Clippers is very strange in that their games after the All-Star break that they have left to play, I think, is the fewest in the league, and so they haven't had the continuity of having all their guys. And I know I shit on Zubats. Of course, he's having like a career year this year before the season started in one of the preseason episodes we did. But who's the backup there? Are you just going to play small ball? Because you get killed by Jokic if you do that, right? You get killed by Adams if you play small ball. With the Clippers, I just think that my question is, did their window close? Because they can't stay on the court and play all. They're resting Kawhi, and there's an injury, and it feels like there's always something. And so it's hard to put them in any kind of driver's seat or front runner position when you don't know what you have.
And Paul George really hasn't been the same since he got hurt in OKC, where he had like that really season where like really he was like one of the top 3 players in the league and do that. And then like both Kawhi and Paul George really have not been physically good in LA to the point where like I'm questioning the Clippers kind of training stuff. There's a little bit on them, but also I think a little bit on like, I don't know that this team is good at keeping players healthy and on the court from what we've seen the last season. It's unfair. Like, I typically look at like, can you keep these guys on the court? And really they've not been able to, where like Toronto, OKC, and San Antonio all did. So there's some of that, I think.
I just wonder if you're Ballmer and you spend all this money, you got this new facility, and you got all this money sunk into this team, and how far did they get Western Conference Finals? Right, or like they're underachieved.
They got to the conference.
They underachieved.
They have the right coach there, and I think I think I trust I think the organizational that the Clippers have is good, and I think they have the right players. What I would question about if I was consulted with Ballmer, I'd say, hey, I think you need to like hire some better training and development people, and you need to kind of figure out how to do better wellness on your players, or look at that strongly, because you really have a lot of, they call this you have a lot of man-days lost, right? So I don't trust your training staff right now that is doing a good job with the players healthy. Yeah. And again, maybe I'm wrong, but this is what I'd be looking at for them, because they haven't been able to keep these guys kind of on the court healthy, right? That's, I can't really argue at this point.
Yep.
I mean, you could, but I'm like, they're not staying healthy, right?
Yep.
I mean, looking through
like I said, if you can't keep your best players on the court, then they're not reliable. If they're not reliable, then you're probably not going to get very far in the playoffs. And Paul George shows flashes. He plays fucking amazing at times. And then, he sinks back to earth, or he's sitting out, or.
I think there are structural, physical issues I think could play with Paul George. which is where I think it's not him being consistent. I think he has wear and tear that doesn't let him execute properly if he's not doing proper training, which
Right.
tells me that, like, that's why I come back to training staff. I don't know that they're doing a good job at getting him to 100% health. It's been 3-4 at this point, what, 3 seasons? Like,
Yeah.
3 seasons in, I don't trust the staff can, like, meet his medical needs or, like, keep him on the court proper. That's just, it's sad, but it's probably the truth. I mean, like, actually, you know what? Like, but yeah, I mean, like, it really is, like, right now, my model takes the Nuggets and the Grizzlies seriously as conference contenders in the West, and it takes a bunch of teams in the East. Boston, then it likes Cleveland a bit, but I mean, my problem with Cleveland, I've said it before. Cleveland is young. Cleveland, I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland makes the conference final, particularly if, like, the Bucks, the Celtics are on the same side of the bracket. But I would be very surprised if Cleveland makes the final. Right? So I expect them to, like, making the conference finals and losing is kind of an overachievement. It's a win for the season for the Cavaliers, right? The Bucks and the Heat. I mean, as I said, the Bucks problem is going to be, like, being healthy at playoff time, and then other teams are just trying to survive. Giannis, and as I said, like, people are like, oh, but they're not, they're not 100% healthy. How do you account for them when they're healthy? But, like, as I said, they're one of the oldest teams. They're basically the oldest team in the league if you take their age and multiply by minutes. And the problem with that is, like, yeah, Brook Lopez is old. Chris Middleton is old. Drew Holiday is old. I mean, relatively old for the core of an NBA team, right? If you want to play them a little bit, like, you want to go full bore with veterans playoffs, that's fine. In season, it's a problem if you have to put all these minutes on these guys to, like, get position and get home court, right?
Right.
That's where it comes down to. The Nets, now that they don't have Nash, like, Jack Bones is a good coach. I've said this a million times before. He's a good coach. He should have had this job before. He has this job now. And when he's coaching, that team is a professional basketball team, right? You know what I mean when I say a professional basketball, right? It's exactly the same as the Ty Lue. Like, Ty Lue, when he's coaching, the Clippers are a professional basketball. Right? It doesn't matter. There's a baseline level of performance I expect from that team when that guy is coaching, because he is very good at running his staff, at getting these guys to execute on defense and execute on offense, and they go out and play well, right? They play to their talent level and above, right? And so that's an asset. And I think that's kind of, whereas I like the Celtics coach, but I don't think the Celtics coach has quite gotten to the level where I trust him on every night. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a little bit, it's a thing. I mean,
Okay. When I look at the West and even the East, I mean, I'm going to list something off.
But I mean, like, look at, like, right now my model has it: Denver, Memphis, Sacramento. I don't trust. I mean, Sacramento. I've seen Sacramento live. I went to see him in New York, and Sacramento. You know who the best? When I went to see Sacramento, you know who the absolute best player on their second unit was?
The second unit, Harrison Barnes.
No, Harrison Barnes was starting, man. No, I'm talking second unit. It was Matty D, man. It was Matty Dellavedova was the best. In 2023, Matthew Dellavedova was the best player on the second unit for the Kings. And I think the Kings have done a good job, but good Lord, right? That's really hardcore.
Well, the Kings are also, I still look at it. Are they talented? Yes. Is Sabonis good? Obviously. Can they score? Can't stop anybody. They're not a good defensive team. And in the playoffs, defense matters. So when I look at the defensive ratings, the Grizzlies #1, Cavs 2, but these are all the teams we talked about as potential contenders making the finals or even the conference finals. Grizzlies, Cavs, Bucks, Celtics are your top 4. And the Heat are 5th, which is awesome, but they're last in the league in scoring. So, I do like the Pelicans are 6 on that list.
Remember I said about the Bucks being old? The Heat have that exact same problem.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's like, and no, they've made multiple conference finals. This team is, they made the finals. They made multiple conference finals. They're very well coached. But I do think that there's a point where, like, being this old, right, like, in terms of having, like, relying on other players becomes a real issue. This is why these older teams have real problems in the regular season, right?
Yeah.
Because the regular season is a fucking grind. And pardon my French. And so you're kind of, you eventually do have to reset your roster, because get to the playoffs. Like even the Warriors are struggling to make the gonna struggle to make the playoffs because it's really hard, particularly when in the case of the Warriors where you've missed on these like they've had these great draft assets completely whiffed on them. And so like it's really hard to last through the season. Your veteran team needs you to hit on those extra like roster spots for you to be able to kind of like, get a really high seed and get home court. Like you look at the Celtics, and the Celtics have done a really good job at filling out the rosters like from spot 6 to spot 12, right? And that's really helpful because even when guys are missing, you can go out and win these games because you have these guys that also they've gone through all these wars, so it's much easier for you to kind of survive attrition, right?
Well, the
And
Celtics
like
are
the regular
super
season
deep
is not
too. They're super deep. I mean, they got Peyton Pritchard just sitting on the bench. They're like, "Hey, we need you in here." And he comes in, hits, bangs out a few threes, like as if he was just still playing regular minutes. Like they're super deep. So I trust a team like that more than I do a team like the Clippers who aren't available, or even the older teams. The game's so fast paced in the regular season right now, so much scoring. Explains why the Heat maybe are last. They like to slow it down and grind it out, and it's not working.
No, I totally agree. And again, I think the Heat are the Heat are very well coached. The Heat do a really good job at finding guys. Like the Heat do like
Truths, yeah.
just finding these guys to fill out the roster. Lakers actually do a really good job. Jimmy Buss, who's the guy who runs their the Santa Monica Lakers, the league team, the brother who runs that, does a really good job. But again, the problem is, some of these teams is like, yeah, you can do like the job of filling out the rosters, but like if your top of the roster gets old, then and your conference is competitive, it gets to the point where like, yeah, that's not enough. It's still really hard to playoffs. So yeah, I mean, you gotta have a combination of both, right? And that's kind of where we are. Like, they're like, and this is like sometimes having these rosters that are solid and professional across the board, and maybe not like top level great, can lead to really good results. See the Utah Jazz, right? Like, so that was a roster that when we were looking at it per season for doing picks, I was like, dude, that's a bunch of ballers. That's a bunch of guys who do really, really well and who have experience like doing good shit and playing playoff games, doing that. Like, Mike Conley was the guy who was top 5. And so like, I never thought that team was like, they're 24.5. Shit. That team was never 20. Like that team was always going to like last through that number because like, even if Danny like traded everyone and their mother, I mean, the line was 24.5 for that team. They've already won 23, right?
Right. Everyone's 25. They hit it already. They already hit it.
Like, we're going to talk about the teams that was the easiest over bets. Like, the easiest over bets were like teams like that. Like Indiana. Indiana was the ones like, dude, like, no. Like, that team, like, they're gonna fuck around and win 35 games. And yeah, they might like, if they wanted to push for the playoffs on that, I don't know if they want to push for the playoffs, either Utah or Indiana, that might just trade. Utah in particular is a team that has like a bunch of dudes that can trade for assets that would be really helpful for there's like 12 teams in the league that could use guys on the Jazz, right? Like, now, whether or not they're going to be willing to pay for them is a whole other thing. But like, it's the same thing. Like, look at, Indiana had Halliburton. You're like, have Halliburton, they have a bunch of dudes. Unless they're like, oh, they're going to make a trade with the Lakers. They didn't fucking make a trade with the Lakers because the Lakers wanted too much. But if you don't make that trade, then that roster, they got competent basketball players, a good coach, and a star in the making in Halliburton. The Thunder, surprisingly enough, I mean, another guy I saw this season live. Have you ever seen Shai Gilgeous-Alexander play?
Just on TV, not live.
He is like, when you watch him, he is that dude, right? Like,
yep.
He's that dude that everybody's just like, the other team is completely focused on him. And he just like, it's John does the same thing. He's just going to run through it. And I mean, again, that team has a bunch of dudes that are like, they've actually done a decent job at like drafting and developing these dudes, and they're actually starting to come together, right? Yep. You're looking at that roster, and like, and again, part of that is having that top star guy. And Alexander's that, but then Giddey, I really liked when he was with Australia, tall dude, and like move the ball and do things. He said, "You're sighed because you thought the Pistons should have gotten him." Yeah, no, but I
he's
remember I remember watching Giddy in the Australian League and watching him in international ball and going like, this dude is really fucking good because he's like, he's tall, he can defend, he can play, he can drive he basically play guard, he can play defense at the 4 and the 3 and the 2 and the like. He's a guy who can do shit, and if he's got like the offensive game and the passing going, then yeah, he's definitely a dude you want in a top 6 in your rotation for like a good team championship. Like that's so they have these dudes that do like, sometimes that is really kind of helpful, particularly in a season like this where there's a lot of teams dealing with a shit ton of attrition. Like the team that has like 5 or 10 guys that do good shit, then does do really well.
I really like, sorry, my dog had to go out. So if you heard that, that's what that was. I like the Thunder, their chances of even jumping up possibly into the top 6. They're young. They're healthy. They have the easiest remaining schedule of any team in the league, and they're good. I mean, they're not like they're 7-3 in their last 10. Point differential is not huge
right now.
Australia is.
Right now, my model has them as best value I've got them at 82% with the playoffs, so they're like the best value on the board for if you want to bet on somebody to make the playoffs.
Yep.
They've got a really good odds. Their division odds aren't great, obviously, because they're with, I believe that's Denver, right? Wait, confused there. Like the conferences, like divisions, all confuse me sometimes. Give me a second. I need to like have this in front of.
No worries. I'll tell you my easiest bet of the year, and it was not one that was pleasant to make, but it was real because of real life situations that happened with players. Was Charlotte. They were projected at 34.5 wins, and as soon as they had Bridges that had to beat the shit out of his girlfriend or his wife, right? As soon as the domestic violence bullshit went down, I'm like, they're done. And then LaMelo was hurt. I'm like, oh, they're done. Their over under now, I believe it sits at like 22.5 or something crazy low like that. So they really, I mean, that was a team their number at the start of the year, I was like, they're not going to make that number. Even if they were healthy, I think they'd struggle to make that number because the rest of the East was so good. And now they're just, they're bottom feeders like my Pistons.
Yeah, I'm actually looking. I've got a log of my bets, so I'm actually like trying to find it to say because I want to like say, hey, what did I actually I know I was on the over on. Hold on, I'm looking for my bets right now. Well, that's the model, not me. Okay. So yeah, I was over bet on Indiana, which was like the easiest bet on the boards.
Yeah.
I was under fade on the Jazz because I didn't trust that Danny wasn't going to trade the entire fucking team. Right? Still a possibility. I believe I was over bet on the horse, but I thought Melo was going to be healthy. I was. Let's see. I said Utah. No, I was under fade because of the sell. I'm looking at teams that like are really crushing it now. Utah, Sacramento. What was on the Kings? I think I probably faded. I was under fade on the Kings. The problem with the Kings, even though I liked the Kings, was that like that division is like I didn't know that I didn't know what the Clippers. So like if you don't know what the Clippers are going to be, you're like I don't know if I can trust this stupid Sacramento team. Oh, I'm looking at my bets. Under bet on the Warriors, good bet. I believe they were 52. Jesus, was the line? Yeah, the line of the Warriors was 52 before this. Jesus freaking Christ. That's a high number for that. I mean, again, the reason being that like I respect the Warriors, but again, the problem with the Warriors is that the roster after like spot 5 isn't that great. And the more they play Wiseman, the worse off they are, right? So it's kind of like, let's see.
Sixers are at 50.5, but that was one that I took the over on that one.
I took the over bet on the Sixers, and it looks to be it's gonna come down to the last day of the season. Sixers probably, like because it's 51 was the number for the Sixers. So like I've got them predicted right now for 51.3. So effectively, if you're holding the Sixers, you're probably betting on Sixers. You're betting on You're betting on the opponent at some point to middle out. Just like there'll probably be a spot where you can basically like, I haven't looked at the late season schedule, but there'll be a spot where you can do that. Yeah, but no, the easiest bet for me was probably like the Pacers was the easiest bet on the board.
Yeah.
Since you like, I think what did I do for Cleveland? Cleveland was another where I thought they were going to be really good, but like I was kind of like mixed bag on them. So Cavs, no, I had under fade on them, basically. Interesting to look back at these now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at some of the. I grabbed a few things that I was like, that was that I look at now and I'm like, wow. So like Toronto, we thought they'd be better than this, right? 46.5 was their total.
Supposedly everybody hates, like, or not everybody, but a bunch of guys don't like Nurse. I think it's just time for them to kind of, divorce is coming up and like reset is coming up for that team.
Yeah.
It's just these things happen. I mean, the Lakers have actually been really, really feisty for like fighting to see if they can actually like hit their total. I still don't believe they're going to, but like they've been a lot feistier than something. At some points in the season, it looked like they were just going to go in the hole completely, but they've actually managed to like, they're 5 wins ahead of where I had them. They're like picks for 38, and really they have kind of avoided like completely collapsing on themselves, right?
Right.
Yay for them.
I misspoke, by the way. Charlotte was 36.5 wins, not 34.5. So that made it even. Once the suspension happened and once LaMelo went out, I was like, yeah, there's no fucking way. There's absolutely no way they're hitting that. So who do you like? Who do you like MVP wise? So we've got, there's a bunch of guys that are listed that as, Jokic stands as the favorite as of right now in Vegas, but it's fairly close. I mean, you've got Jokic is minus 140, Doncic plus 400. I think that's going to depend on where they finish more than anything else. I feel that way for all these guys, quite frankly. The availability and then how good was your team overall? Tatum's third at plus 700. Embiid same.
I have a fairly accurate MVP metric that basically measures out like it's the way it works is like what percent of the team's volume of production did you do, and how many wins your team is going to have. Typically by this point, I have a good idea. But this year, I have like the top MVP score guy right now is Luka at 50%. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 guys over 30, right?
Wow.
And again, I have Durant at 48. I have Jokic at 46. I have Tatum at 44 and Ja Morant at 44. So effectively, it's gonna be a game of like, who wins? I think Luka and Kev, and I think Luka's. I gotta consider him out because his team won't win enough games.
Right.
So I think it's gonna come down to Durant, Jokic, Tatum, and Morant and Ja. I think Ja. Like the other part is, you don't win. You almost never win unless you hit top 5 in MVP voting. So like, I'm not sure. I'm gonna check real quick. I'm not sure if Ja's basically finished top 5 in the previous year. Let me actually like see if I have MVP for 2022. I want to see.
I'm looking back. The last 4 MVPs, there's only 2 guys, but the last 4 MVPs are all big guys. And I don't, as the league, you look at Orlando and you look at OKC and how these teams are being built now to compete. It's all big guys. They're not really going after, they may have a Shea or someone else, but then they've got a bunch of 7-footers on the wings now. That's one of the reasons I like Denver so much, because they're long.
So the only guys who are in the race right now that have actually like either won or got in the top 5 are Jokic, I believe Jokic, Luka, Embiid, and Durant, right? Tatum.
No Tatum? Does it say no Tatum?
Tatum finished, his highest finish is 6th, and Ja's highest finish is 7th last year. So I think Tatum and Morant are probably like, if I could bet them to like get top 5s, I would bet them to get top 5, both of them.
Right.
But it's going to come down to it might come down to it might come down to what's more between Durant and Jokic. I mean, it depends. I mean, if Durant can't stay healthy, and maybe if Denver slips back, so if Boston has a big enough lead on Denver, then Tatum could win it. There literally are 5 guys to win this, right? I don't think Embiid can, because Embiid just doesn't stay healthy, right? I mean, that's just
availability
that's
is always his issue.
He just will not play enough games, particularly in a highly competitive MVP race. Unless you thought that he was going to play 70 games and the Sixers were going to finish with the 1 seed, I would not take Embiid to win MVP.
No.
It's a really interesting race. I mean, one thing. So that is the MVP score. I also measured something that tells me I measure out what I call will points, which is basically I give people points based on whether the best player on the court, the second best player on the court, the third best player on the court for every game. And for that stat, the leader for the season, the guy who's on average, he typically gets 3 points for being the best, 2 points for being the second best, and 1 point for being the third best. And the guy who gets about 1.6 points a night is Jokic. So, and that's been consistent for the last through. If you're watching a game, there's a good chance that Luka's the Jokic is going to be either the best or the second best player on the court, right? If he's playing, Luka's so it's Jokic, Luka, and Doncic, and then Tyrese Haliburton, who again he's playing really fucking well. But I mean, I think it's down to if it's a toss up, you might get Jokic. Particularly Jokic, if his team wins the 1 seed, might be I don't know, I don't feel like there's that level of voter fatigue where they would vote, right? Because it would be his third. It would be his third straight. And now, what are the odds like? So honestly, this is making me think about the odds for Tatum again. This is the really interesting. I'm not I'm looking at FanDuel Sportsbook right now. Free plug for them. I want to see so I want to look at the.
Hey, they're not a sponsor. Don't know.
Well, no, I mean, I'm curious. I'm curious to see what the awards odds are. So right now for MVP, Jokic is better than even money. Then Doncic at 450 and Tatum at 850. I kind of like that Tatum at 850 number because the value is if Jokic misses some time, if somebody on the Nuggets misses some time, they full off the pace, then yeah, I mean the Celtics end up being the Celtics end up being the number 1 overall seed, then there's some real value there. I think Doncic is way too far behind for me to trust him, right? So right now the Mavs, let me go conference. Mavs are the 6th seed right now.
Yep.
So if the Mavs are in the play-in, I don't think you're not going to win the MVP you're the play-in. Maybe, but I don't think so. If the Celtics are the number 1 seed by 4 or 5, then there's a real case for Tatum, particularly when he plays 80 and put up the number he's putting up. The case gets better if there's some voter fatigue for Jokic, and if there's basically the Nuggets aren't exactly number 1 seed, right? So there's some slippage. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Who do you like for him?
I mean, at this point, if I put on a game, this is how I look at it. If I put on a game, is this person just absolutely dominant, right? And that's where the Durant argument is interesting because he's played really good defense in addition to being an amazing scorer. Morant, the team plays great defense. I'm not sure that he's necessarily, if you look at the leaders in defense and all these things, he's not really there. So it's usually the big guys. They end up winning Defensive Player of the Year and all that. So I try to take into account where's the team at, and do they play on both ends of the floor. So Jokic, I think, is great. Doncic is average at best on defense. So for me, that's a hard sell. Last year when the Mavericks played good defense, it was a little bit easier of a case to make, but they're not great defensively this year. I think Tatum's a great defender. I think that offensively, again, when he's on, it's like watching Jordan all over again. You know, he elevates and you know it's going in every time.
What's really strange with Tatum, right, is that he's not in his prime yet. Like
Right.
it's we forget the joke that he's so young, but he's 24, right? So he hasn't even the prime for generally you consider the start of the prime when they hit 26, right? So effectively he's still kind of figuring it out some. And so that kind of plays out. I think that right now, right now, Jokic is the best player by basically every advanced metric. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win, particularly since it would be his third MVP, and that gets us into some really interesting historical territory, right? Yeah. So if you look at actually, I'm going to look at but yeah, I think winning 3 in a row. Let's see who's done that. Giannis won 2, Curry won 2, LeBron won 2, then lost. The worst loss, that third one with Derrick Rose. But again, LeBron also left to Miami, which I think was part of that.
Right.
I'm trying to think, the last time somebody won 3, if I asked you without looking up, who was the last person to win 3 straight MVPs? Who would you say?
I'd have to go back to, is it Wilt? No, can't be that far back.
Only one person has won 3 straight MVP. Well, actually, no, 2. But the last person only one person post merger, right? Let's say that one. And 3 people have won 3 MVPs in a row. So this is really, really, really top level. You can't guess who it is? 3 people, 3 MVPs in a row.
What would be Jordan?
No, Jordan won 2 a couple times.
2, right.
Actually, he only won 2 straight twice. Yeah, once.
Which is kind of insane. It's the voter fatigue thing is kind of a huge bullshit thing. I'm sorry.
Really, because those years where everybody's going back and forth. So really, the last person to win 3 straight MVPs was Larry Bird, and before that it was Wilt, and before that it was Bill Russell. Yeah, it's Russell, Wilt, and Bird. And so, can Jokic win his 3rd straight MVP? Man, he could, but I do think that his team has to be the number 1 seed in the West, and they probably need to be within a shouting distance of the Celtics, or you could see a voter split going towards
Tatum.
So. And I just don't say Tatum wouldn't deserve it, right? But I do think that it's a very interesting thing, because I do think Tatum defensively is a better player than Jokic. Jokic does a lot of things on defense, but I think Tatum does get the tougher assignment, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So but Jokic is definitely the better defensive, more consistent offensive player. So it's between them, it's interesting. Curry's just not going to win enough games. Anthony Davis was an interesting candidate, but he was never going to stay healthy.
Yep, the health again. Yep, availability.
Never ever going to stay healthy. Luka, his team just not good enough. Zion was an interesting kind of for a while, but again, he's out and he's never going to jump there. There's a couple other guys, but I think really, we've narrowed it down. It's either going to be Jokic. I think Jokic, Tatum, or no, I think Jokic or Tatum. Right now, or Durant. And I think my thing with Durant is I don't know if he's going to play enough games too.
Right.
He's another one of those do I think he's going to play enough games? I'm not sure.
It's interesting. It's been interesting watching ever since Durant demanded a trade, which didn't happen. It's been interesting watching the value of different players as they're getting moved around. So obviously the Gobert debacle of a trade, that set the bar for it has to be one of the worst trades of all time, right? That was terrible. But then, Durant's well, I want to get moved too. And everyone just sat there on their hands. They're no, we're not paying that much for a guy who's injury prone in his 30s. Sorry, it's not going to happen. I just wonder if that's the end, because there's so much parity and there's so many teams so close together. It makes me laugh as a Pistons fan, because Bogdanovich is one of the prize free agents. OG Anunoby is another one out of Toronto. And it really depends. Are they going to blow it up, or are they going to be buyers in Toronto? But it just makes me laugh. Bojan's been great. He's putting up better numbers with better efficiency. So that's the typical argument is best player on a bad team, sure, but he's doing it at a higher efficiency. So it's not like he's he's not. There was a player down in BSN here who will remain nameless, but he played in the G League, and they were celebrating. They're like, he had 50 points in a G League game. Can you believe it? So I went to the box score. I'm like, yeah, I'm 35 shots. Like, that's fucking terrible. So he's, the volume is there, but the efficiency is also there for Bogdanovich. But this, I'm interested to see which. To me, there's like, if I'm Detroit, for example, unless the Pelicans come with first round picks or someone, or a first round pick and a young player, I just sit on them. I keep them for the year and let's see who else is available. But I'm just interested to see at the trade deadline who's desperate enough and has enough parts to make something like a Bogdanovich or an OG Anunoby trade work, right? Or even Jay Crowder for that matter. Well, I don't know which his value at this point. Hasn't played and is content, I guess, just sitting home. But it's going to be interesting to see it. Who feels like, that they need that extra piece. And you can go through almost every team except the Celtics. The Celtics and maybe even the Nuggets. But you can go through almost every team that's still in it, quote unquote, and like, oh, I could see them making a move, right? The Bucks could stand to add someone. The Sixers could stand to add someone. Yeah, it's just the Grizzlies could stand to add someone. Like, all these teams really are missing
the trick is going to be the price and whether people want to part with draft assets, because this is going to, like, the other thing is this draft is good. The current draft is like I'm sure Dignity will take your calls. Like, so if you walk there's like there's a bunch of guys on this fucking team. Like, you could use Markkanen. Yeah, you're right. Vanderbilt is fucking great. I love Jared Vanderbilt. Walker Kessler is good.
Yeah,
Conley's good.
He was a steal.
Sexton's okay, but he's usable like that. Like, and there's like, there's a bunch of dudes on that team. Like, that's one team that could be a seller. We've already mentioned we've mentioned Indiana.
Yeah.
Right. Like Indiana, like with TJ McConnell, like Miles Turner. And again, I think the problem with Miles Turner is like the people are always like he's a nice piece, but like people are like, oh, Miles Turner is a nice piece. He's a backup center on a good team. He's not like, they're like, oh, he's a backup center on a good team. Buddy Hield is useful for a shooter. There's guys on that team. Like, let's see who else could be a seller on this one. Are the Bulls? Would the Bulls sell? Probably like, oh God, no, I don't know that. No, I don't want. Well, if you could talk me into, like, I would talk to the Bulls and see what they're willing to, if they're willing to trade Caruso. I would always take Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso is a guy who always has a spot. If I'm on
good defense,
good defense, can do things, can shoot. He's perfect. He's a perfect 6th, 7th guy on a good team. Yeah. Just like tons of great energy.
There was a rumor. There's one of the aggregator accounts on Instagram posted that Bobby Marks and Zach Lowe said that the Bulls are willing to part with Zach LaVine, which they didn't say that. The two of them said, if you're going to blow it up, then you send Zach to the Lakers and take back Westbrook and those 2 firsts. And that's the start of their kind of rebuild. But I don't know if they'd be that aggressive. I don't know if that's a move that's, there's just so many. Chicago is an odd team. They're really odd.
I don't really love that fit for that. Like, I think here's the thing. I think the Lakers. I don't want to, like, I got to be a positive. So if the Lakers somehow got healthy, like if Anthony Davis was playing really well before, like Anthony Davis is a really, really, really good player. His problem is that he cannot stay. His problem, and I've said this before, is he carries too much weight on him. Like, and what I mean by that is, like, we've got enough evidence now that, like, for guys who are this tall, they put on too much muscle. They're being told to do the wrong thing. Whereas you want to look like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, or look like Victor, who's coming in now, or think about like Tim Duncan, who they basically switched to MMA training later in his career, or Dirk, who did yoga to try to stay leaner, right? Leaner and lighter, less stress on the joint. So I think that Anthony Davis, like, plays too heavy. He bulks up, he gets too heavy, and that is the detriment. That's why he's always having like leg issues, right? Because his frame can't handle the weight. So he was playing really well. I mean, like, if you trusted him to come back at this level, I really don't, because again, he's still carrying too much weight, can't work out that efficiently because he's got leg problems, and he's not going to come back to 100%. He's still going to be carrying too much weight, which is going to make it even worse. So, but if he actually, for by some miracle, came back healthy with the guys that they added and the way they're playing, I mean, I do think they could win the series or two. It's a really, like, once you get into the playoffs, then like there's no, we've said this before, there's no drug testing the playoffs. So the older teams and the team with like relatively weak health can actually, like, all of a sudden, like, it's the playoff Rondo thing. Hey, why is Rondo all of a sudden like leaping above the rim? Well, because he's he's doing the Dr. Feelgood shot, which he can do now with cortisol, which means he doesn't feel pain on his knees and his recovery time is shorter, so he can jump higher. And so veterans, like, I call that Rondo. He's not the only, like veterans do this. There's no testing, so it is easier for you to recover, and you have more rest too. So like veteran teams can do better. Like, this is kind of what I think the Warriors are counting on. Whereas I think that, like, so I don't know. I get why LA isn't willing to blow this stuff up more than they have. And to the point where, like, if I was LA, I would really kick the tires on Anthony Davis. I would, like, if you can get away with it, I would kick the tires to see if you can actually get something back for him, because I would rather get back 75%. I mean, if you can get a 75% or 80% return on Anthony Davis in younger, more available players, sometimes the most valuable ability is available. Have you heard that one before?
Yeah.
And so Anthony Davis just doesn't play enough games, and his frame is set up in such a way that you don't trust him to stay healthy and on the court. So effectively, if you can trade him for, like, a haul of younger players that will stay on the court and complement you, keep you in good stead for the next 4 or 5 years, then maybe you do that. I mean, I don't know what that package looked like necessarily. And I don't know like, who's trading that would take Anthony Davis? Who are we talking to get, like, players back?
Well, so I'm trying to go through my head of who has the assets too, right? Because that's the biggest thing is teams that, there are certain teams like I heard a pod where they talked about the value of first round picks and how LeBron just doesn't give a shit. If you look at all the first round picks he's ever had to play with in his career, most of them have been bad. So he's like, I don't care. Would
you do like Josh Green, Spencer Dinwiddie, Chris Wood, Tim Hardaway Jr. and a bunch of picks for, like, Anthony Davis?
I don't think that the Mavs have that many picks though.
Yeah,
I think they're picked, like, they only have like one, and that's like because they're still eating shit for the Porzingis trade, right? They sent all their picks away on that. So I don't think they have the picks to get that done.
Yeah, I was thinking Miami, but like Pat Riley's not doing that dump trade.
No, Utah has a ton of first. The Pelicans have, which would be fucking ironic.
Yeah,
right?
Danny will help you drive the price off on Anthony Davis, but he's not going to trade for Anthony Davis.
Right.
He's shown that he's willing to put in, like, a silly offer that he has no intention of holding through it on him. Portland isn't blowing up their structure for like, it's like Justice Winslow, Josh Hart, Jeremy Grant. No, fuck that.
No.
Jesus Christ. There's not a lot of, like, I'm looking at
you look at contracts, you look at what's available. I mean, once you start really narrowing it
down.
Oh,
wait a second.
Charlotte?
I gotta go. I got a good one. Mitch, Rob, Randall, Brunson, and Quick.
That's
the Knicks would do it. I think the Knicks, I would pick up the phone and see what the Knicks are willing to, like see if you can come up with a deal for the Knicks for Anthony Davis.
Yeah. That'd be interesting.
Are they willing to just get picks from them and get a bunch of dudes that you can fill out the roster?
Right. That's interesting.
Because I think the problem is, like, I don't believe that Anthony Davis will ever play more than 60 games in the season, right? In the regular season. And I don't unless he physically remakes his body, unless he physically starts, he needs to just change his training style. Basically go to, like, MMA training, get himself, like, leaner. And so he's carrying less weight and he's playing at a lower weight level than he's currently playing.
Yeah.
And again, I just think he's getting probably bad training. I don't know. It's like, it's weird. How did we get on the Lakers again? We're talking like best. We're talking about like best players in the playoffs, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking MVP at one point, and then we started kind of bouncing around from team to team. And we ended up in LA. I look at when I look at the middle of the pack for most of the, the non-Nuggets and Grizzlies and the non-Bucks Celtics. And again, I'll put the Cavs in there as a, potential contender. It's just wide open. The rest of the league, there are teams that are just, it's been this like roller coaster. Like think about a team like the Hawks, right? Where they're like, Trae Young is essentially boycotting the coach again. And now they're 7-3 in their last 10. And they're in the 8th seed in the East now. You think about a team like the Heat, right? Who were out of it. Now they're 7-3 again in their last 10. It's been so streaky that it's been fun to watch actual. I don't normally just stick to like Pistons games. I'll watch other teams, but on any given night, I watched the Magic game last night. Like they're a fun team to watch. There's just so many teams that can put it together for these stretches, have a good record, and they turn around and ship the bed with 3-7, or worse. It's been interesting to watch, and I've been enjoying the season, even with the injuries. And there are some teams though that I just skip. I don't watch the Clippers because why? Who's going to be there tonight, right? It's just not worth it. But there's been a lot of fun teams. The top 5 seeds in the East are all fun to watch. I don't know. It's been I've been entertained probably more this season than many other ones because of the parity and the fact that there's so many good young players.
I mean, I think, as I said, some of this is a situation where like as I said, it's a change season, right? So we're basically kind of seeing these teams kind of figuring themselves out, and again, some of these players are there. But I mean, I think, the ghost of some of these older players is still around. So I think like it'll get to the playoffs, it'll be a little bit more interesting. Or a little bit maybe
Foster
less
game.
right? Well, I mean, that's always going to be a thing. Like, there's always going to be that, like, we're not going to get into the whole ref thing, but like, I was talking through some people and kind of like, they're like, I was like, yeah, they weren't familiar with the whole Scott Foster, Tim Donaghy phone calls and the whole, there's a couple articles out there that talk about the actual statistics on whether or not it's like, but I mean, it's, again, obviously I think it's gonna be a scramble and it's gonna be really interesting. I do think that people complained about the play-in, but really one of the better decisions that the league has actually done, because it makes everything so much more interesting. Yep. Because people are in play, and really there's a good chance you're gonna get the Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. Like right now, okay, so if it ended today, NBA standings, your 9 through 10 seed in the West, right, would be Phoenix, Minnesota, Golden State, and Utah, right? That's your 9th. That's your 7th through 10th. Yeah, and assume let's say the Lakers get in, so it'll probably there's a good chance it'll be the play-in's going to be insane, and the play-in in the East is like New York, Atlanta, Indiana, and Chicago, right?
None of those teams are winning the title. None of those teams are winning the title.
Yeah, but and then Washington, Toronto are floating around, and then Oklahoma City, the Lakers, and Portland. So yeah, I mean there's a lot of interesting teams. And then there's a bottom tier that's there, but even Orlando is 3.5 games out of the 10 seed.
Yep.
Could Orlando make a run? Yeah. I mean, now they're healthy. They got Isaac's back. I mean, I think this team is Paolo Banchero actually has. I think Banchero is actually good. He's an actual good player. He's killing the Celtics every time they play. Like Jesus Christ! But there are that is a team that is interesting. Fultz, Markel Fultz has actually been good. I mean, I don't think he's never going to live up to his potential probably, but he's been he's a good NBA player now. Yeah. So I mean, he's throwing that into you, and that's an interesting team. So yeah, I mean, there's some interesting kind of spots. Really, there's 4 teams out of 30 that I think are completely out of it. But outside of that, everything else is going to be fun. And everything is going to be interesting. I mean, you could see something weird, to put it in perspective, the Lakers are 2 games out. No, actually 3 games out of the 4.
Right.
In the West. And the Magic are, let's see. Yeah, this is a quick math.
There's
7.5 out of
3.5 out of
7.5 out of the
points.
6 seed. So I mean, like, even that's not completely crazy. For them to like make a late run now that they're healthy and they've got the full roster of players. Don't think they're gonna. I'm not saying they're gonna win the Southeast, but like it's they can probably like hang in terms of like making it to the play-in.
Yeah.
Crazier things. Particularly, I think the Wizards are probably going to fall off.
Oh yeah. Well,
so
they traded Rui Hachimura, which okay, like you got some scoring, I guess, for the Lakers, but and a little bit of length, but that's not. And Pelinka said they're not done. So, but I think I'm interested to see the Wizards this year are what they are. But I'm wondering about Kuzma hitting the market, and is he going to stay? Because it could be him and Brad as the 1-2, or is he going to try to go somewhere else where he'd be the 3rd or 4th option? I don't know, but that I don't know. I don't see, is getting rid of Kendrick Nunn a good thing for the Lakers? Sure, absolutely. Is Rui someone who's going to is he a game changer? Fuck no, he's not. So but the Wizards are a team that just they're like my Pistons, right? Brad Beal is not even a top 10 player in the league, so they're not going to go anywhere. That they're dead loyal to him, and they're one of those teams that's just going to go nowhere, and they seem content with that. They seem content with just being like in the middle.
Rui's been good. This is it. Like I kind of think that the Lakers might. I think the Lakers are gonna make the play-in. And I think the Lakers might actually kind of hang around and maybe there's a chance they crack
if they're healthy. If they're healthy,
they might make their over. Like I might lose my money on. I mean, what the hell was it? What the fuck is their over? Because I want to say that, but like, what the hell was the over on the Lakers? I don't even remember. Lakers over was 40. I don't know. Well, 45. Wow. I mean, like if LeBron could stay healthy for the entire season, then they might have a shot at that 45.
Also have the 13th hardest strength of schedule remaining. So
yeah, their back end of the schedule is not good, and like again, I don't trust the health of like their top, but maybe
Yeah. I don't know. Too weird. Well, it was awesome talking with you again. Thank you again for coming on. Again, if you like this podcast, please make sure that you give us 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you are watching on YouTube, welcome. Please subscribe. I posted all the old episodes up there as well. So please subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. At some point, I will post videos as well. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.